Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the DFO DFS Hockey Report. I always try to tweet out our show right as we're going live during that 30 seconds, and it's never enough time. But I'm Brock Seguin. As always, we got our friend and colleague, Zach Laing, with us. Zach, it is a Tuesday with only 5 games. The NHL schedule is inverted this week. It feels a little weird, but happy to be here. Nice looking 5-game slate on our hands. How are you doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. Fun slate here tonight. Really, a couple of interesting spots that I'm really fascinated to see how they break down tonight. I'm doing okay overall. I mean, I wish I had a little bit of a better night tonight, but that 40% payout on the 1x20 is calling my name again tonight. So I'm looking forward to getting after that and a couple other contests here on this slate.
Yeah, I mean, for an 11-game slate yesterday, it was remarkably low scoring. We were on some really good spots. We were on some not so great spots. I ended up fading the Senators pretty well. A little bit of Ottawa 3, but I ended up fading Ottawa 1 entirely. That worked out pretty well. San Jose 1 worked out really well. That kind of game stack of Anaheim, San Jose worked out well. Just Vegas, Tomas Hertl getting ejected immediately really sewered a lot of my lineups last night, unfortunately. And Minnesota had their way. And then obviously, I'm assuming you didn't have the best night because whenever the Oilers don't have a great night, it's usually tough sledding for you.
Yeah, pretty much. A little bit too much Edmonton last night, but that's okay. Won back some of my money with some of the other lineups that I had, so that was a good thing. But excited to win it back tonight because I really, really like this thing tonight.
Yeah, it's a fun-looking slate. Let's dive into it. We've got Joseph Woll likely to get the start for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Jake Allen was on the ice this morning during an optional skate, which usually suggests he is not the starter. So Jacob Markstrom projected to get the nod here for the New Jersey Devils. Before we dive into the rest of the goalies, just really quickly on the Toronto Maple Leafs. William Nylander, they said, is day-to-day, which to me suggests that he's not playing tonight. They also have Austin Matthews listed as a game-time decision for tonight's game. I tweeted it out earlier from DFO Fantasy that when you take a look at this lineup, usually you can kind of read between the lines and figure out, like, okay, if they're expecting a player to play or not. These are like almost entirely new lines that it feels like they've put together with the thought that Matthews, Nylander are not going to be in the lineup tonight. So I have a hard time believing Matthews is going to play. He took a shot off the foot in overtime against the Red Wings. I believe that's what he's dealing with right now. They're also going to be without Dakota Joshua and Chris Tanev. So the injuries, they just started to get healthy again and really starting to pile up again for the Maple Leafs. So again, I would say probably a 10% chance Nylander plays, maybe a little bit higher for Matthews. He's the official game time decision. So just keep that in mind if you plan on building around the Toronto Maple Leafs this evening. Let's keep rolling now. As the Florida Panthers are projected to go with Daniil Tarasov, it's second half of a back-to-back for them. It's going to be Sam Montembeault back between the pipes for the Montreal Canadiens. It has been a while since we've seen Montembeault. He went down to the AHL on a conditioning stint where he did not perform very well, basically either playing for his job or basically just a showcase so they can trade him. It is his first NHL start since December the 9th, so nearly 21 days, 3 weeks ago. Stuart Skinner in a new mask, a temporary one for the Pittsburgh Penguins, gets to start for them. Projecting to see Frederik Andersen for the Carolina Hurricanes. Brandon Bussey started yesterday. Obviously, Petr Kochetkov out for the year, or expected to be out for the year. Spencer Knight will go for the Chicago Blackhawks. David Riddick expected again for the Islanders. Ilya Sorokin not quite ready. Then you've got Thatcher Demko versus Dan Vladar in the nightcap with the Canucks hosting the Flyers. So Zach, no Red Wings, no Oilers on the slate. So it's kind of a pick 'em here for us. Who do you want first, game 1 or game 2?
I'll let you rip this one with all the lineup news here around the Leafs.
All right, sounds good. So the Leafs, this game, betting line was obviously a lot tighter earlier this morning before we got news for the Maple Leafs that Matthews is a game-time decision. Nylander likely out, as I just mentioned. The line has shifted pretty significantly now towards the New Jersey Devils, who are now minus 130 road favorites with a 3.1 implied total, 2.8 implied total for the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Devils still struggling a little bit. I mean, basically opposites attract here. 24th best offense versus the 25th ranked defense at 5v5. 15th best offense versus 15th ranked defense. The really only huge advantage in this game looks like it's going to be the New Jersey Devils power play versus a much maligned Maple Leafs penalty kill. So let's get into the line stacks for this one. As I mentioned, kind of remember everything that's kind of surrounding the Toronto Maple Leafs here and whether or not these lines could possibly change. But Toronto one does grade out pretty well. And with the changes, very cheap. Matthew Nyes at 5,200, John Tavares at 5,800, and Max Domi at 2,800. They're projected to see a decent chunk of ownership. I think it's fair because I do think that for, I when you look at this lineup, this feels like a line that's probably going to get a pretty healthy dose of minutes tonight. And it's hard to ignore that when they are just 13,800. Regardless of how you feel about this line, they're going to play a ton. They also fully correlate on the top power play unit. Now, this is a top power play unit that has been better since they fired Mark Savard, but it's been a power play that has struggled this year. Whether it's just Mark Savard's fault that they sucked or not, we'll find out. But they struggle with Matthews and Nylander on the unit. I don't think that replacing them with Matias Maccelli and Max Domi is really going to help that much. So I don't know how I feel about this power play tonight, but at the end of the day, this is a $13,800 line that's going to play a lot of 5v5 minutes and fully correlates on the power play. So you can see why the field is getting there, even if they don't necessarily feel like the best play ever. The matchup, though, is quite good. They're projected to see most of their ice time, 47% of their ice time, against the Jack Hughes line, and then kind of a mixture of the other three lines for the remaining 50%. The Jack Hughes line has struggled quite a bit defensively, and the underlying metrics here for Toronto 1 aren't too bad. So if I'm going to go to the Maple Leafs at all tonight, it is going to come through this top line, and that is probably the extent of it for me. On the flip side, the New Jersey Devils look like they're in a really good spot here. Obviously missing some blue liners, some key pieces for the Leafs. New Jersey 1 grades out the best, closely behind them, New Jersey 2. Once again, it's pretty comfortable leaving Andre Palat off, but Hughes and Bratt make a very nice mini stack. I really don't mind full stacking this entire top line. Just $16,100 that top line feels like a really nice price tag for them. Matchup wise, not really very good, but as we showed up top here, the Maple Leafs have not been very good defensively, and the penalty kill has not been very good. So I do think that they are pretty gettable tonight, even if the matchups don't suggest it's the best. Offensively, the metrics a little bit better for New Jersey too, but very strong still for this top line as well. So yeah, I think a lot of my interest is going to come through this New Jersey power play, which I don't know what's going on here. Why they only have, I guess it's the power play, expected power plays is really the issues for them. But yeah, really a nice matchup, just not projected to see that many power plays this evening. So by and large, like when you look at this slate, I mean, Carolina, Pittsburgh feels like the best game environment, then probably followed by Florida, Montreal. These other two games feel pretty low scoring. So Toronto and New Jersey, to me, Zach, feels like it's probably kind of like average to slightly above average in terms of a game environment or game stack environment. So I want to get into this game, and the field feels pretty similar here with these three lines all garnering close to 10% tonight.
Yeah, this game is certainly drawing quite a bit of ownership here. I think it's an interesting one for sure. I mean, the concern for me with this top line for the Leafs is just the presence of Max Domi, just an offensive black hole, does nothing out there. That being said, like I still think it's a fine spot to get to, and it's pretty easy to leave him off, even though he does have a tremendous value projection individually on this slate tonight. So who knows? Maybe there's something here tonight with him specifically. It is worth noting: 2 goals and 16 assists for 18 points in 26 games played against the Devils. Certainly going to need him to get on the board to be payoff here tonight. Matthew Nyes, John Tavares, they've been fine lately. I'm fine getting there in this spot. Again, my rules, right? St. Louis goaltenders and Jacob Markstrom. And Jacob Markstrom, if he gets to start tonight, I like this spot here for the Toronto Maple Leafs for sure. I think it is worth mentioning that it does feel like Markstrom's numbers have improved a little bit as of late here. Save percentage still isn't great at an 883, but only negative 1.5 goals saved above expected right now for him. I don't know if I'm going to get to any of these other Leaf spots. I kind of agree with you here. I will say I don't mind Nick Robertson one-offs at $2,700. Strong value projection here as for tonight's slate. Tons of shot volume as of late for him as well. So I think he's an okay punt play if you want to get, really punty on a lineup here tonight, which I don't really think you need to do just with the pricing of everything. Him and Easton Cowan, I think, would work perfectly fine. The Devil side of things, yeah, tons of interest in this power play, right? I think that's the easiest way to kind of attack it. You can see it in the ownership too. Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier drawing a lot of that ownership. So I think this is an interesting spot for sure. I'll be getting to the field here on the Devils, even though, their matchups are pretty rough here tonight coming up against the Leafs. But we've all seen the struggles that the Toronto Maple Leafs have had throughout the course of this season. And as of late, it's no different. They're giving up 3.2 goals against per hour at 5-on-5, according to Natural Stat Trick, over their last 10 games played.
Yeah, I think you bring up a pretty good point here with Nick Robertson, and even just that third line. If you do want to go kind of stars and scrubs, I mean, Cowan, Waugh, and Robertson, I mean, the underlying metrics are pretty underwhelming, but there's enough firepower, I think, on that line with Cowan and Robertson that they might be an okay play. Going to see a mix of the second and third lines of the Devils, and second line, as I mentioned, struggles quite a bit. So I don't hate them as a really deep tournament field. Deep tournament play if you want to kind of go stars and scrubs. Let's get to game number 2, the Florida Panthers hosting the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, the Panthers only minus 124 favorites. It feels a little bit surprising to me, but they got a 3.3 implied total, 3.0 for the Montreal Canadiens. Taking a look at the line stacks here in this game tonight, Florida 2. Doesn't really need to be said a whole lot more. They're tremendous and still far too cheap. At $18,200, I just don't know why the pricing hasn't moved up for these guys. They've been just tremendous all season long. They're going to be one of the chalkier lines on the slate tonight, drawing 15% ownership. Montreal 1 also drawing a good chunk of ownership. They're coming in 5th overall on the charts tonight, seeing 10% ownership. Florida 3 grading out really well here tonight at 8th overall, drawing a bit of ownership. Florida 1, of course, always a viable option with Sam Reinhart up there on that top line. And then Montreal 2 coming in at 21st overall. Taking a look at the matchups here in this game tonight, solid pace score, second highest paced game of the night. Favorable matchups for this top 9 for the Florida Panthers. And I think that's where a lot of my interest is here in this game tonight. That top line, it's going to be top line against top line. And then that second line and third line going to see a mix of a couple of different lines there. So I think for me, like, it's pretty easy to get to Florida 2 here tonight, right? I mean, these 3 guys have been absolutely tremendous. If there was one guy that I'd be comfortable leaving off, it would be Carter Verhaeghe. Just hasn't been a ton of shot volume from him as of late here, which has been a little disappointing to see because I have him in season long and he's just not quite been performing well enough for me over there. Nonetheless, I think this is a great spot here tonight, despite the rough matchup score. Panthers also coming in with a top-ranked power play on this slate tonight. Obviously, you got that full correlation there for Florida 2. You got Sam Reinhart, obviously, and Mackie Samoskevich down there on that third line. Samoskevich on his own, drawing like 12% ownership tonight. So that's boosting some of those ownership numbers we're seeing on Florida 3 here. On the Montreal side of things, man, it feels kind of tough for them here tonight. I mean, the matchups are not great. Poor matchups for the entire top 9. And then Montreal 4 somehow has a 100% matchup score, which is absolutely hilarious to see. The line stats for Montreal is kind of what you'd expect. I mean, you take a look at this group here and, this top line is their best offensive line, but even still, some of these metrics are underwhelming. Only 10.1 high danger chances for per hour of ice time. You'd like to see a little bit more goals, but they are generating quality. I can see why the field's getting there a little bit, given that it is just a 5-game slate here tonight. Both Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki have had success against the Panthers in their career. Nick Suzuki, 9 goals, 20 points in 19 games played, 7 goals and 12 points in 14 games for Cole Caulfield. I don't mind throwing a little bit of ownership their way. They are pretty expensive, both up over 7K there. But, I don't know if I'm going to get to, 10, 12% ownership the way that the field is kind of getting to them here tonight. But I'm okay throwing a bit of a dart. This second line, it's pretty bleak to get to the second or third line here on Montreal. They are drawing some ownership here, this second line. 4.5 goals for per hour for these 3 guys. Pretty hilarious to see. But the rest of the metrics are pretty poor for them. And they do grade out just 21st on the charts overall tonight. Brock, how are you kind of feeling about this game here?
Yeah, I don't usually play a lot of Montreal, but the top line is always kind of an okay play. I recognize that Suzuki and Caulfield have both had strong years. Then you get Texier up there at $2,800, who was a bit of a hot starter in Montreal. He's cooled off a little bit, but I mean, Bolduc just wasn't getting it done up there. So I like the move here with Texier. He's had some strong offensive numbers there. The underlying metrics, very small sample size, have been pretty good. And yeah, let's be honest with ourselves here. Like, the Panthers are winning a lot of hockey games, but they're still giving up a fair amount of goals. Daniil Tarasov's not anybody that really scares us away. And then obviously, as you mentioned, I mean, just minus 124 here on the second half of a back-to-back. So the Canadiens are expected to produce some offense with a 3.0 implied total tonight. And I think that they can get there a little bit. It's not an egregious, like, it doesn't feel like it would be a good chalk play, but they're not that chalky. So I don't mind getting there, 10-15% on them. Feels fine. But yeah, just a significant amount of ownership or interest, excuse me, in Florida, particularly the second line. But I don't mind getting, sprinkling in the rest of this group. This third line is really interesting. Obviously, with Skevich up on that top power play unit, that helps. But the underlying metrics are very, very good. And they're extremely cheap. I would probably leave AJ Greer off, but I don't really mind the Samoskevich and Rodriguez mini stack. You could go Samoskevich and Seth Jones, something like that. Get that little power play correlation going, and then obviously you can just fully stack the power play. They are projected for 3.4 power plays tonight. They draw a ton. The Canadiens pretty undisciplined. Good power play versus a bad penalty kill. Like, everything kind of lining up here. When you take a look at the projected XG on the power play tonight, it is the Florida Panthers and then basically everybody else. So, yeah, I love the Florida power play. Again, most of my interest coming in on Verhaeghe, Bennett, Marchand, but I will get to these other two lines. And yeah, I think that this third line is a super, super interesting value option tonight. I wish it was a bit of a bigger slate with some of the really expensive teams on here, because like they would be a perfect pair to play with, like Edmonton or Colorado or any of those other really expensive lines. So super interested in the Panthers tonight. Let's get to game number 3, Pittsburgh and Carolina. My XG model has the Pittsburgh Penguins and Carolina Hurricanes with the top 2 XGs of the night. So a very high event game here. And one that is expected to produce plenty of offense. If you take a look at the last month in terms of raw XG numbers, Pittsburgh number 1, Carolina number 2 on tonight's slate. That is in terms of XG against the Pittsburgh Penguins, pardon me, the worst defensive team on the slate here. Carolina middle of the pack, so feels like a really, really good game environment, especially with the Hurricanes coming in on the second half of back-to-back. We know that Frederik Andersen has been a shell of his former self, and boy, things are going poorly for Stuart Skinner in Pittsburgh. 4.18 goals against average, 831 save percentage, 0% quality start percentage in his first 3 games, has yet to record a win. Got a feel for him. But yeah, this game just lines up absolutely lovely. Really, really interested. I bet the over immediately. Feels like a great environment for goals tonight. I'm interested across the board. I will be honest with you that the majority of my interest is coming in on the Carolina side of things, but I don't mind getting to Pittsburgh. I'm a little bit more hesitant with them just because they are drawing a considerable amount of ownership. When you take a look at the ownership projections here from our friends at Roto Grinders, they are projected for the highest ownership of the night. I don't know necessarily how I feel about that. When you take a look at the matchups, it's bad. It's really, really bad. But, the power play matchup for them is pretty decent. I do think, Pittsburgh 1 can certainly get there, but they do grade out 14th of the charts as the highest owned line on the slate. That does give me a little bit of pause. So pretty interesting stuff there. I will get to them, but maybe not quite all the way up to 15, or maybe just meeting the field. I don't think I'll be overexposed to the Penguins tonight. On the other side, or let's stick with the Penguins, because I do think there's a decent amount of value here in the rest of this roster, despite there being really poor matchups. Novak, Mantha continue to play pretty well together. Brazo coming off of a hat trick. They're really cheap at 10,800. Mantha continues to be a solid option while he's on that top power play unit, so I don't mind getting to him and maybe a little bit of that second line, but nothing too I won't get too carried away. The third line continues to have strong underlying metrics, just not scoring. Kendall has been great on the power play this year, has done nothing at 5v5, so I'm a little wishy-washy about Pittsburgh 3. Carolina, just the underlying metrics here are through the roof across the board. It's as good as it gets. The top line draws a much better matchup than the second line. But when you look at the matchups, we're basically splitting hairs here. I think all 3 or 4 lines here for Carolina is got a good matchup. I talked about it. The highest XG over the last month on tonight's slate is XG against is the Pittsburgh Penguins. So really, really nice matchup here for the Carolina Hurricanes. We had the late scratch of Shane Gostisbehere last night. I mentioned in the Discord, really like Alexander Nikishin, really like Sean Walker. It was Nikishin that moves up to the top power play unit. He picked up an assist, had a couple shots or a couple blocks. He played well. He's a really good value tonight. Again, I believe he's still just $3,100. He played 24 minutes last night. I like Walker. You could probably get to Keandre Miller as well tonight. So I really like the value on the blue line for the Hurricanes as well. So lots of options tonight. Jackson Blake was great yesterday. This top line had really, really good underlying metrics in a small sample size so far for Svechnikov, Aho, Stankoven. Don't mind getting to them. The fact that you can fully stack them for 16,800 is a joke. Ehlers, Blake mini stacks are firmly in play. Lots to like about the Hurricanes tonight, especially if Stuart Skinner's struggles continue. So, as Peter Porker says, Carolina Def is just too cheap with Ghost out. Yeah, there's just so much value on that blue line right now. And it's good value too, right? Like you got Nikishin on the top power play unit. Walker does a ton of shit. Miller does a ton of shit. I mean, Nikishin, Miller, Walker, all grading out within our top 10 in terms of value defensemen tonight. So love all three of them tonight. Zach, I'm assuming you feel pretty similar to me on this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Tons of interest here in this game. A little worried about the matchup for Pittsburgh for sure here. But hey, listen, I mean, this is a Penguins top line that has been finding their way offensively here. And again, with Freddie Anderson getting the start, that's the biggest reason why I've got interest in getting the Penguins tonight. 3.27 goals against average for Freddie Anderson on this season as a whole. Negative 2.1 goals saved above expected and 868 save percentage. It's been rough sledding for him, man. There's no way to sugarcoat it. So I think for me, like I'm willing to kind of meet the field, be a little bit under maybe on Pittsburgh 1. And I'm going to throw a little bit of ownership at some of these depth pieces on the second and third line of my 20 max here tonight. Again, I recognize it's the rough matchups here for sure, but I don't mind the idea of a little bit of this second line. Obviously, you got Mantha there correlating on the top power play unit. That's a positive there. And even on this third line, Ben Kendall still finding his way. Like he's got good shot volume. He blocks some shots as well. Want to see some more offense coming out of him and Wrecker McGroarty. Obviously a guy, tons of shot volume from him, 9.6 shots on goal per hour over his last 20 games played. And then on the Hurricane side of things, yeah, I mean, it's the Stuart Skinner show in Pittsburgh right now. So I think Skinner's another one of those guys that you can feel comfortable stacking opposing lines against. And I'll be meeting the field or getting over the field here on the Hurricanes as a whole. I like where the ownership's at for this top line. I'm comfortable getting there a little bit over top. But honestly, man, like this second line looks like they're in a pretty good spot here. Again, all things considered, at 5% ownership for them as a whole, I don't mind getting a bit over the field. Probably leaving Kokeni and Nemi off of some of those stacks there. But Ehlers and Blake, I think they're fine plays. And then again, you've even got Jordan Stahl there on that third line with that top power play correlation. That's certainly a positive. So yeah, I love this game tonight. It certainly to me feels like the best game environment on this slate.
Yeah, I like the Hurricanes a lot, and the power play matchup isn't the best ever. The Penguins really good PK, but I do just in terms of value, like a Blake Nikishin mini as well. Get that power play correlation feels really good tonight with how cheap those two, big minutes and lots of upside. Blake hit the shot bonus last night and combined they're $7,100. They're cheaper than Brian Rust, so I don't mind them as a pair tonight either. Let's get to the Chicago Blackhawks and the New York Islanders. Super interesting game here. A lot of red across the board here. Both teams struggling offensively, both teams struggling defensively, both power plays struggling, and the Islanders PK struggling. So not a lot going well, but the Islanders still minus 133 road favorites in this one. Break it down for us.
Yeah, fascinating game here. Islanders as the road favorites, minus 133 on the money line, 3.2 implied total for them, 2.8 for the Chicago Blackhawks. This is one of the more interesting games on the slate, I think. And it's solely due to the fact that the Islanders top line is one of the chalkiest lines on this slate. They're drawing 15% ownership here coming into tonight with Bo Horvat, Matt Barzal up there on that top line with Emil Heineman, but they rank 15th overall in the charts tonight. The Islanders second line looking like they're in a much better spot overall here as the sixth best line to target on this slate. Chicago looks like they've got a couple of interesting spots here. That third line grading out well at 11th overall and that top line coming in at 12th overall. What's really interesting here is this Islanders top line and the matchup that they have tonight. They are projected to spend 78% of their ice time going up against Chicago 3. Now, in the last number of years, we have really kind of thought of Chicago 3 with Jason Dickinson at the center spot as one of the better shutdown lines in the entire NHL. Right up there with that Jordan Staal line, just consistently a great defensive line. Well, those metrics haven't quite been there this season, but boy, have they arrived in a huge way here. Taking a look at the line stats for Chicago 3, their defensive metrics are through the roof good here. Absolutely tremendous numbers defensively from them. And this Islanders top line for the ownership that they're drawing, the offensive metrics aren't super strong for them. Not a ton of high danger chances, decent clip in terms of their scoring rate. And in their scoring chances rates. But boy, it feels like a bit of a tough spot here for them as a whole. And I think that if Chicago 3 can find a way to kind of limit what the Islanders top line is going to do, it could certainly be a bit of a spot to fade here. Bo Horvat drawing a ton of ownership at 20%. Matt Barzal coming up there at 14% as well. Emil Heineman, probably one of my favorite plays on the slate is actually Heineman, even still, just because of the shot volume that he's had. And he's priced at only $3,600, one of the top value forwards on this slate here. But I really do think that it could open up this second line. Is it on Anders Lee night here tonight? I mean, boy, it certainly could be. The goal scoring has finally started to catch up to the expected numbers here as of late over his last 20 games. 1.6 expected goals for per hour, 1.3 actual goals scored, shooting 15%, finally starting to rebound here. I think this second line for the Islanders could be one of the more interesting pivot spots on this entire slate. They're projected to spend 55% of their ice time going up against the Chicago Blackhawks top line, whose defensive metrics are absolutely abysmal. This Islanders second line, man, I think this is a spot that I'm going to be getting well over the field here tonight. I'll probably be pushing 10-15% in my 20 max here with these three guys in hopes that they can find a way to kind of capitalize on this. And with the Islanders top line going up against Chicago 3, I think I'm still going to get ownership there. I'm probably going to get to 10-15% just because they do feel like a dangerous trio when they are together here. But boy, this could certainly be one of the more interesting spots on the entire slate here. It is worth noting the Islanders do have a good power play matchup as a whole, the third best on this entire slate, but they have a really bad power play going up against a really solid penalty kill, at least from overall percentages here. Chicago is, the most undisciplined team on this slate as a whole. So there could still be a world where this Islanders top line is able to get a goal or two on the power play and still find a way towards the top of some of these contests. What are you kind of feeling on this game here tonight, Brock?
Yeah, we talked about it before the show. Like, I do think this is a very interesting spot because I think there's a couple things here. I personally think that New York's top line with Horvat and Barzal will come in as the chalkiest line on the slate. I think that they will be north of 20%, both of them. I think they will end up coming in higher owned than what the chart suggests right now, which that scares me a little bit. The Dickinson line, if you look at just Dickinson by himself this year, still really good defensive metrics, 2.29 expected goals against per 60, just 22 scoring chances. Like this matchup is, exactly what they did against the Crosby line the other night. It did not work. They still, that team still put up 7 goals, but it came through Justin Brazeau and, scoring a hat trick. Like that is the second line. That is Anders Lee tonight. Like that's how I feel this is gonna work out. Like I think there's a pathway here that the Dickinson line does limit the Horvat line, and they end up being pretty bad chalk, and the depth pieces go off. If you take a look at this game against the Penguins the other night, Crosby had 1 assist. Rust had 2 goals, but like I think they can take him out. You look at Justin Brazeau, 3 goals. Anthony Mantha, a goal. The fourth line scored a goal. Like, I think it makes sense, and I think there's a little bit scary chalk. Now, where they can get there is how you just suggested, the power play. They have the number 1 power play XG as a line on the slate. So I'm not going to completely cross them off because I do feel like they can probably still get there just on the power play alone, which is entirely possible. So I'm not writing them off completely, but I am probably coming in under the field here tonight, and I will come in over the field on the depth pieces of the Islanders. The problem with that is their depth kind of sucks, right? Like, yeah, I like Anders Lee. Drouin doesn't have much of a floor. He can certainly be okay. Pajot's just okay. So, like, it's hard to feel super, super confident. Like I feel better about Anthony Mantha, Justin Brazeau, and Tommy Novak than I do what the Islanders have here. Shabanoff and Callum Ritchie, good offensive players. The underlying metrics suck. So I do have a little bit of a hard time fully trusting in, but like I'm going to buy into these matchups because they are phenomenal. I'm going to get there. I'm going to come in over the field in the depth of the Islanders, under the field in the top line, and just hope it works out. I think it's a good leverage spot. I also think that Spencer Knight is a little bit of an interesting play, although it's risky as can be. On the Chicago side of things, I think this top line is a little interesting with Bertuzzi, Green, and Burakovsky, but overall, I just don't trust this team to do much offensively, even in a good matchup, and David Riddick has played very, very well. So, yeah, the Blackhawks have killed 84% of their penalties this year, but they still give up a lot of chances. So I think there's a chance for this power play to have a pretty good night for the Islanders, but I'm not really that interested in the Blackhawks. But Green's been playing well lately. I think this first line makes a little bit of sense. I won't get too carried away. It's always, we talked about it, a lot last year, and we talk about it this year. I'm doing Wowies again lately, and I do think that historically when we do this show, the Wowies have really helped us identify some really sneaky spots and also avoid some of these really bad kind of landmines. And I kind of feel like this is the Islanders' sign. If they come in north of 20% and they see 80% of Dickinson, there is a really good leverage spot here, in my opinion. Any final thoughts on this one before we move on?
No, I do realize that I kind of forgot to talk about Chicago entirely. I was just so fascinated with the Islanders and what their situation is here. I do think that this top line is a little bit interesting here. I feel best about Bertuzzi, and it might just be through like a one-off sort of situation, or maybe some Artem Levshunov along with him as a mini stack here. Not that the power play is in a great spot or anything like that, but get some 5-on-5 correlation there. I don't have a ton of interest playing these depth pieces though, because I think David Riddick is a really great play between the pipes here tonight.
Yeah, and like Dickinson and Mikheyev have performed pretty well lately. They grade out well. I just don't trust them really. One other thing to get to before we move on from this game, Matthew Schaefer, unsurprisingly, has just been an absolute stallion this year. Grades out as the best defenseman tonight. So I think that's super interesting. Also grades out as the best or the highest owned defenseman on the slate as well. So I think there's other avenues too, right? Like if you don't want a full stack, the Islanders top line, you talked about it with Heineman, like $3,600. Him and Schaefer as a mini, I think makes some sense. Even Barzell feels a little too cheap at 63. Him and them as a mini, or even Horvat, like those minis with Schaefer. I feel best about Schaefer. To be honest with you, he's my favorite Islanders play tonight. So to me, I'm still going to go with some full stacks, but I think a lot of my ownership is going to kind of come through some of these potential minis with Heineman, Horvat, Barzell with Schaefer to get that power play correlation. And I think you at least avoid the full line just shitting their pants. Like you could still, they might not get it on the board tonight, but Horvat could still have 5 shots on goal and pick up an assist and still be a pretty good play. And Schaefer can have a great outing, and it kind of all works out that way. Let's get to Vancouver and Philadelphia. Not a great hockey game here. You got the 30th ranked 5v5 offense against the number 1 ranked 5v5 defense. I think it's going to be pretty difficult for the Vancouver Canucks to generate offense tonight, much as it has been all season. There was some reports yesterday. There was much more exciting hockey games. So I'll be, full disclosure, did not watch a second of Vancouver and Seattle. I will say thank you to them, though. I bet the under, and it looked dead after a 2-1 opening period, and it ended up cashing. So I loved that. But they, some reports from Vancouver Beats said that looked like this team had a bit more fire under their ass. It was like kind of the scratching of Jake DeBrusk kind of woke up some of the vets, and we're like, oh shit, like if we keep dragging our ass, we are going to get scratched too. So that's interesting. Whether or not DeBrusk gets back in the lineup tonight, I don't know. I probably haven't projected to just stick with the same lineup. We'll see what happens there. I imagine he's back in. Where he slots in, no clue. I don't really have much interest in playing Vancouver. It's a really, really bad matchup. You take a look at them here, it's bad across the board. Lowest event game of the night. I just don't see a reason to get there. If I were, it's going to be this top line. It's going to be Kane. It's going to be Pettersson. It's going to be Besser. They're seeing a decent chunk of ownership. I could probably meet the field there. The rest of this team, I don't care. Philadelphia, very interesting as always. This top line grades out as the number 2 line overall. They are drawing pretty good ownership at 10%. Good matchup here, right? They're going to see a lot of Vancouver 3, a little mix of the rest of the bunch. Vancouver 3, pretty poor defensive metrics. I mean, kind of poor defensive metrics, but have not given up a lot of goals, which is interesting, but just awful offensive metrics. They're The second line, they're going to see a pretty good matchup tonight as well. They're going to see a lot of the top six of the Canucks, which is really bad defensively. So I think the second line makes some sense. I think this top line makes some sense. I've talked about it. I have been a Noah Cates, Bobby Brink, Tyson Forrester stan for years. Love that third line as value. They do nothing offensively without Tyson Forrester. Even with Matvei Mishkov there, just nothing going offensively. So I'll probably stay away from them for the most part and really focus on these top two lines. Couture doesn't do a whole lot for me, so I like the Barkey Tippett mini stack. I like the Tippett one-offs. His shot volume is obviously great. And then full stacking the top line is fine. Zegras connecting mini stacks, they're fine. The power play here grades out second best tonight as well. The problem is they literally just go like 50-50. Like it's like whichever power play unit is humming kind of gets the bulk of the work. So nothing really to go off here other than this top line fully correlates on a power play unit. So you can include Drysdale there. Barkey got moved up to the top power play unit, provides a little, or top unit, provides a little bit of extra value there. Then you've got this third line kind of fully correlating on a unit as well. If you want to go that route, I think, you still could get to Philadelphia 3. I just feel like they need to score on the power play because the underlying metrics offensively are bad. So what are your thoughts here on the Flyers and Canucks?
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable playing 0 Vancouver Canucks here tonight.
Okay.
It feels pretty tough getting to them on a regular basis. And against a really stingy defensive team like the Flyers here, I have a hard time seeing this being a spot where they're able to generate much offensive success at all. You've of course got the Rick Tocchet narrative here, his return to Vancouver after being let go from them last year. Does that light a little bit of fire under the Canucks? Who knows? It might, but it could also mean that, he's got the inside scoop on how a lot of these guys play and how to kind of target them. So for me, I really don't have much interest in the Canucks at all. I think, maybe I'll throw 5%, maybe 10% total ownership on them. If I do, it's coming through this top line for sure, or Jake DeBrusk if he does end up drawing into the lineup here. He's a guy who's probably going to be a little bit hungry to get back on the board offensively. In terms of Philadelphia, I feel much better about them. Love the look of this top line. Definitely going to be one of my higher owned lines on the entire slate here. They're just so affordable, man. They're just so affordable and easy to get to. Dvorak and Konechny have been rock solid as of late. Would love to see some more shot volume from Trevor Zegras. That's dipped a little bit in his last 10 games here, but he's been super productive as well. Oh yeah, he's also got 4 goals and 14 points in 12 games played going up against the Canucks in his career. So I think he's an interesting play. Don't mind getting down to the second line either. We've seen Owen Tippett absolutely nuke slates before, and this is a spot where he could have that potential as well. Like, what was it the other week? He had like 10 shots on goal and a goal or two as well.
10 shots, 11 shot attempts.
Yeah, and just broke open a smaller slate as well. So I think he's a guy I don't want to miss out on him here tonight if he has another one of those kind of wild games. So a lot of interest in Philadelphia, very little interest in the Canucks.
The Flyers top line grades out as the second best value stack of the night. I showed him here. You've got, my mouse disappeared. You've got all three of them grading out within the top 25 in terms of value forwards. So strong plays there. Let's get to the defensemen and the goalies before we head out. I talked about it already. Matthew Schaefer grades out as the number one defenseman tonight. I think Luke Hughes is fine. He doesn't do a whole lot. He's had a really kind of down year, but $4,200 is an affordable price tag for a guy that's on the top power play unit against a Maple Leafs team that is very banged up. I talked about Nikishin, Miller, and Walker, 3 of my favorites tonight without a doubt. Don't mind getting a Hudson either. I think the Canadiens are in an okay spot there with Tarasov getting the start. Some of these Leafs defensemen are pretty cheap too with some of their injuries. Like, Ekman Larsson 3,500 is kind of interesting. Who are our shot block odds of the night? Brett Pesce, $3,200 I think makes a lot of sense. Carey, I think makes a lot of sense. All those Habs guys, that should be a higher event game. They make some sense to block a lot of shots tonight. Who are you looking at tonight, Zach?
Brett Pesce is probably one of my favorite plays here on this slate tonight from the blue line. He looks to be in a great spot tonight, $3,200. Since returning from injury, his DraftKings point totals 11.4, 6.9, 2.6, 27.2, and 6.9. He has been just tremendous since returning from injury. So a guy that I, very low owned on this slate, seeing just 2% of the ownership, I'll easily be over the field on Pesce here tonight. You talked about Nikishin earlier. I think he's a great play here on this slate tonight. Sean Walker as well, right there alongside him. So I think those are some of the guys I've got a lot of interest in. Evidently, Matthew Schaefer, a tremendous play here on this slate tonight. I think he's in a good spot. A couple of these Flyers defensemen, that have been doing a lot of shit lately, Nick Seeler, Cam York. I think those are interesting plays there tonight. So I don't think I'm going to get super punty, probably living in this 3K range here. There seems to be a ton of great options in there.
Yeah, Cam York's been on a bit of a heater as of late. Quick question, favorite play, 5,900 or less, not on Florida or Philadelphia? A couple quick answers. Andrei Svechnikov, I think, would fit there. Probably him and Timo Meier would probably be my two favorites. Maybe John Tavares, just because he might see additional minutes. But I would say Svechnikov and Timo Meier would be my two favorites, not on Florida or Philadelphia. How about you, Zach?
Yeah, I agree with both of those. I think I'd prefer Meier, but I think John Tavares, if you can get him in there, I think he's the one to go with.
Monty, 4-0-1 against Florida in his last 5 games, a .927 save percentage. I mean, that is interesting. I don't think it changes my opinion on him. But I mean, at the end of the day, he was waived by the Florida Panthers. He's got a bone to pick there. So talk about it. I don't know how much I'm buying into it though. Okay, Jacob Markstrom grades as number 1 goalie. I think it makes sense if Matthews and Nylander don't play. Like Markstrom at $7,600 is an awesome play in my opinion. If they're out, I feel like a lot dicier about if those two guys are out. But Riddick, man, him and Vladar look great tonight. Those are probably going to be two of my favorites, along with Markstrom. I think those would be the 3 that I get to the most. Vladar, obviously some volume concerns, but I just think that, the lowest implied total against, hard to ignore. I think he can easily put up a 15 spot. And, I don't think there's any absolute nuke goalie plays. They're going to see a shitload of volume tonight and just stand on their melon, unless Monty does it. So those 3 are my favorite. Just a couple of quick notes here. Dan Vladar, .928 save percentage in his last 4 starts. Hasn't given up more than 2 goals during that stretch. Obviously, a bit of a small sample size. On the flip side, Frederik Andersen's last 8 starts, he's given up at least 3 goals against in every single one of those games. 3.5 on average and .840 save percentage. Just awful. How about you, Zach? Who are you playing tonight?
Yeah, I think for me, my preference here is David Riddick, Jacob Markstrom, Spencer Knight, then Dan Vladar. That's kind of the way that I'm looking at it here. I think this is just a great spot for Riddick. He's been tremendous this season. 20.7 goals saved above expected. He's got a .918 save percentage, 73% quality start percentage, is higher than his 60% win percentage. He's been just tremendous this season. So love him in this spot here tonight. Markstrom, like I know I talked about it earlier, as like this is a guy to stack against. But again, if Matthews and Nylander are both out tonight, then I think he immediately becomes my favorite goalie play on this slate here tonight. Spencer Knight feels like a nice spot for him at $7,400. In his career against the Islanders, 3 wins in 3 games played, 267 goals against average, and a .909 save percentage. So it could be a very interesting chalk buster there for sure.
Yeah, definitely an interesting chalk buster. He's lost 5 in a row, though, with an .876 save percentage. Has given up 3 goals or more in 4 of 5 games. So I think he's dicey, obviously the lowest implied total, but chalk busty, certainly plausible. I mean, we talked about it with Merzlikins yesterday. It ended up being a great chalk busting play with Greaves. Obviously, that play was better with Greaves than it was with Merzlikins. Let's get to tonight's hat trick pick challenge. If you want to participate in tonight's hat trick pick challenge, all you got to do is drop your hat trick pick in the comment section of the video on YouTube, not live chat. Wait till the show's over. Drop it in the comment section. If your player scores a hat trick, get you a $25 gift card to Nation Gear. If someone scores a hat trick that nobody picked, we will just raffle it off to anybody who submitted a pick. Zach, you won last night's head-to-head, so you can pick first. Who do you got tonight?
Oh boy, well, I'm not going to go as off the board as Jordan Eberle pick from last night, but let's go a little bit off the board here. Let's say Sidney Crosby.
Whoa, very interesting. I'm going to go really off the board. Give me Mackie Semiskevich tonight at $3,100. As I mentioned, Zach won yesterday's head-to-head. Now, interestingly enough, I built a lineup. I talked about I really liked Columbus won yesterday. I pivoted. I built a lineup. It was in the tracker. I pivoted mid-show to a worse lineup that did not beat Zach. The original lineup would have beat Zach. I'm a dummy. Columbus won. Always trust your heart, fellas and ladies out there. It never lets you down. And tonight, It is 9-8, looking to get back on track for me. But Zach, who do you got in your lineup this evening?
Yeah, I built one lineup that was too good to share on the show today. So sorry, everybody. So playing that one in a single entry contest. So you guys can all see it there. But I did have a lineup that's somewhat similar here. One with the full Florida 2, Philadelphia 1 stacks here tonight. Obviously, number 1 and number 2 in the charts. Love both of these spots here. Matthew Schaefer for a little exposure to the New York Islanders. Aaron Ekblad, he's been red hot as of late. Get some correlation there with the Cats as well. And then Jacob Markstrom between the pipes.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you compare the top 2 lines in the charts together, it's usually a pretty good build. I went with the full Florida 2 stack as well. Got Bennett, got Verhaeghe, got Marchand. Then I went with the Aho Svechnikov mini stack. Also got Nikishin in there for that power play correlation, just the big minutes that he's going to play tonight. Then I had a little mini of the Owen Tippett and Cam York. Obviously, Tippett, just tremendous shot volume. I think York's one of the better value options on tonight's slate, and that left me $8K to spend on David Riddick. But yeah, I think Carolina is a really interesting spot to get not different, but a nice leverage spot thing. I think they're like pretty modestly owned, and they could just absolutely kill Stuart Skinner tonight. So I'm super interested. Wanted to get them in the mix here. As always, our head to head. If you're not familiar, or you're just tuning in for the first time, you get 1 point if you beat the other guy, and an additional point if you meet the minimum cash requirement in the big $20 contest. So that's how this works. It's 9-8 on the season. Let's roll on. Shout out to our friends at rotogrinders.com for providing projected ownership for today's show. If you want to get $20 off your first month of RotoGrinders Premium, you can do so by clicking the link in the description of the video on YouTube. Also in the description is a link to 20% off Action Network Premium and the link to the DFO DFS Discord. If you want to join that Discord, you can do so. Rebecca has my back here. Hurdle screwed your lineup last night. Sure did. He screwed a lot of my lineups, just getting tossed immediately. What a dumbass. That was just the dumbest hit ever. Like, it was so unnecessary. Anyways, whatever. I digress. Let's move on to the end of the show. We'll see you back here tomorrow. How many games we got?
We got a big one tomorrow, don't we?
Oh, yeah. New Year's Eve, 10 games. What's the actual slate, though? I'm assuming there's, noon start, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6:30. So what time does the actual slate start? Let's see. Is DraftKings got it posted yet? NHL starts. No idea. Yeah, we'll be here at some point tomorrow, possibly. We'll keep you posted. It's obviously New Year's Eve. The boys want to party. I've got some stuff to do, but I'll try to do a show. I think we'll both try to do a show. It's the plan. If it doesn't start till 7, maybe I bet you it's gonna be a 6:30 start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gamer. Yeah, we should be here. Might not be in this exact location, but we should be live on YouTube. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Smash that like button. Hit the subscribe button so you never miss a show. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Happy New Year.